Welcome to the military panel discussion of for GIS Day. My name is Nick Humphrey. I'm the GIS analyst for Montgomery County. With me, I have former military members who will be discussing with you how GIS works in the military, different things that they may have worked with, different products they may have made, and how GIS is growing in that fashion. Everybody here is out of the service right now, but I appreciate each and every one of you for being here. I'm going to start with introductions. First, my name is Nick Humphrey. I'm with Montgomery County. I've been a GIS analyst for almost 20 years now. I started out in the military. I had 10 years of service. In my final, after 2 deployments overseas, I finished up my service as an instructor at the schoolhouse, teaching new GIS service members the ways and whatnots of GIS analysis. And so we will start with Mike Harper. If you don't mind introducing yourself, we'll get started.
Sure. I'm Mike Harper. I'm a senior strategist with Wolpert. Wolpert is an architectural engineering and geospatial firm. I've been with them about since January. Prior to that, I was a senior Army civilian, managing geospatial programs for the Army level for the Army Geospatial Center. And prior to that, I served 28.5 years in the Army as a geospatial engineering technician.
Great. Mick, you mind introducing yourself?
Yeah, sure. I'm Mick Lopez. Wear a few hats right now, but I guess my primary role, I'm a Fusion Center manager and an intelligence program manager at Dell Technologies. Prior to that, I worked as a airborne ISR, that stands for Intelligence, Surveillance, and Reconnaissance consultant / advisor. And prior to that, I spent about 12 years in the Army National Guard, doing lots of different roles. But yeah, glad to be here.
Wonderful. Thank you. Gil, go ahead.
Hi, my name is Gil Gonzalez. I am a retired Master Sergeant, United States Marine Corps. Currently, I'm working with federal innovation offices and helping them to apply better geospatial and GIS principles for federal government products. Prior to that, I finished out my 22-year career in the Marine Corps at the Pentagon Intel Department as a senior strategist and policy analyst, and I focus specifically on military GIS policies for service members.
Great. Julio, last but not least.
Morning, my name is Julio Toala. I'm an Army veteran. I'm currently the Geospatial Operations Program Manager for the Air Force GeoBase program. I live in Cibolo, Texas, right outside San Antonio. I've been in the geospatial career field for about 15 years. Prior to that, I used to do geodetic surveying. Traveled the world all around, except Antarctica. I haven't visited that location. I've been a geospatial analyst for an environmental stormwater prevention plans for the Air National Guard. And then I got lucky to, very thankful to get hired on as the GeoBase program manager at Lackland Air Force Base. That's it.
Great, great. So, Michael, we'll start with you. In your time in the service, and you said 28 years in the service and then several years outside of the service, what are some of the things you saw change in GIS in the military? What's changed?
Well, it was almost entirely manual when I started, right? So a lot of hand-drawn overlays on maps. GIS didn't exist yet, really.
Right.
So I did a lot of reconnaissance of on-site terrain features to determine kind of how those terrain features might impact military operations. And then that eventually evolved into kind of the GIS that you have today, and the need for feeding that GIS very high resolution data so that you can organize it digitally and analyze it and make, enable commanders to make more informed decisions.
Great. Michael, as an ISR collector, or Mick, excuse me, as an ISR collection manager, a person that did that, what does that involve? What are we looking at as far as ISR, and how does that link in with GIS?
That's a good question. So basically, in a nutshell, I was trying to find out what does my team need to know that they don't know about maybe the enemy, the battle space, and I tried to properly task people to find out that information. So kind of like Michael mentioned, back in the day, used to be someone going out there and doing some surveying potentially, but now we have various platforms on aircraft or unmanned aircraft. But how GIS tied in is being able to take some of the data that they were collecting, ingest it, push it back out to my customers, maybe manage this huge queue of requests that were coming in, and looking at it and saying, hey, I see, you're asking for information on this specific area. I actually have information that's a month older than that. That covers a larger area. Would you like this instead? And GIS, in this sense, was just a really good tool to help me manage a lot of the information. Whereas trying to type it up in a spreadsheet or a Word document just wasn't going to cut it.
Great. You said you were in the Marine Corps for 22 years. I guess you never really leave the Marine Corps, but in those 22 years, I'm assuming you were deployed. If you can sort of tell some of the stuff that you did as a service member, as a Marine in GIS while overseas, while in a battle space.
Yeah, so yeah, thank you. So GIS, it's so versatile, right? It's so fluid that it has applicability almost everywhere. And for those of you that have not deployed, you're usually not in, air-conditioned, climate-controlled areas most times with, Wi-Fi and full electricity. So you're really dealing with austere conditions, and GIS. We were able to provide some products to help those folks that were, in the more austere conditions as far as that's concerned. But both Iraq and Afghanistan, helping to support military operations there, and really to kind of tag Michael's summation of the evolution of GIS. Really moving the focus from studying the terrain to, kind of studying the effects of the terrain on people. And so that's more along the lines of how we supported while we were overseas.
Yeah, I definitely agree with you. I think that a lot of that is comes from Sun Tzu's thing, know the world, know your enemy, know the battle space. I'm butchering the quote, of course, but you'll win the battle. So Julio, you said you started out as a geodetic surveyor and then moved into GIS. How does that sort of marry up with the military, going from a surveyor into being a GIS analyst or GIS technician, as the case may be?
Well, in survey, I used to do a lot of CAD, computer-aided drafting.
Mm-hmm.
So that kind of helped me to see what the end result was for doing all the field work. And actually, I had a warrant officer, Chief Smalls, Lawrence Smalls, and he kind of just mentored me, just like, hey, this is where the future is going. This is where you need to be moving into, and just seeing like the changes. And I mean, he was showing me things that would happen 5-10 years later, and nothing in the military. He just kind of like took his time, just kind of showing me things, and that's where there was a big change. So he kind of just pushed me to, hey, go ahead, and I need to go ahead and change my career field. But seeing all the changes, I mean, a lot of it has come true.
Nice. So building on that, Michael, with what you've been in the field for several years now. What do you like about GIS? What do you enjoy? What sort of gets your juices flowing about GIS? What do you like about it? Or maybe you don't like it and it's just something you've done for so long.
Well, let's see, I've done it for 35 years now. So, what I think is great is, at heart, I'm an analyst, right? And I'm an analyst still today, even though I work on things that are at a much higher level. But what's exciting is how you can take multiple sources of information and then fuse that together to help someone make a really informed decision. And I think that's where the power of GIS is how you can take all that information, put it into a common operating picture, and people can visualize it and understand it and make meaningful decisions from it.
Great. Mick, the same sort of question, but in what you're doing, how has the military, the knowledge that you received in GIS and military, how's that transferred into what you're doing now?
It's a great question. So I think one thing I kind of failed to mention earlier is my military background isn't quite as aligned with GIS as everyone else's, whereas I think most of the rest of the panelists here were GIS focused. I was an all-source intelligence analyst, so I was pulling all sorts of information, reports, GIS information, things like that, and tying it all together. So when I transitioned to the private world, I stumbled into a role that's very similar. I brought some GIS skill sets, and I'm doing what we would probably all consider pretty basic GIS tasks, making what's called in cartography choropleth maps, maybe multivariate maps, and presenting it to my leaders and our teams here, and their minds are just blown away by these visualizations. So just bringing that background of knowing how to really just tell a story with really simple, not overly complicated maps, and then kind of like what Michael was saying, presenting it and letting people make meaningful decisions with it. That was probably the most valuable thing the military taught me was just combining it all, putting it together.
Same sort of question to you. You worked obviously in the Marine Corps at sort of a unit level, and then moved and finished your time in the Pentagon, and now with your job now. Has it been a smooth transition to the whole thing, or are you learning that there's a lot more to GIS than what you thought, or is it sort of the same thing you did in the military, what you're doing now?
Yeah, thank you. So the transition was not hard from moving from supporting in a military operation to the things I'm doing now. What was surprising though was the breadth of geospatial analysis that I had yet to discover, and that was just due to the nature of the military, where you're not going to get 100% of the accuracy and fidelity of a product, because it's just going to be useless. It's there was a time-sensitive, time-dominant aspect that existed in the military, where an 80% GIS product is usually what was needed and what was useful. And so when you're only working at 80% in a time-sensitive environment, you tend to miss out on some of the big analytical muscle movements. And so, making that transition, that was probably the most rewarding, was that there were still things to be learned about GIS.
Absolutely. So Julio, and stuff that has to be learned in GIS. I mean, obviously the transition is a big thing. What did you do yesterday at work? As an analyst in the position that you're in the civilian world, working with the Air Force, what type of stuff did you do yesterday, or what is your typical day at work? As an analyst in the civilian world outside the military.
Well, I'm no longer an analyst. I'm more like in a manager role. I receive briefs for all kind of current projects and any issues going on with Air Force installations and their geospatial information officers. I was also briefed on training that's going to be happening next month to our analysts, because we're teaching Air Force personnel how to use GIS dashboards and story maps. So that took like 90% of my day yesterday, just sitting there, daily briefs. But most of my day is spent 1/3 briefs, 1/3 just kind of getting wrapped up, because I've been in the job for about a month, so I'm still kind of just learning the in and outs, and you can't meet anybody when they're all working at home.
True, just like this.
And just kind of learning the Air Force lingo. It's a lot different then the Army, just some of the things I'm like, don't you guys call that? And you'll actually be surprised the stuff that you think they would have, because we all, nobody's Air Force here. We all thought, you know, like the Air Force was, you know, like they had the money pot, they had everything, a nice DFAX, nice barracks, but they're behind on GIS. I mean, they want to get caught up to the Army level. They want to have their own, you know, Geo battalion. They want to have the Army Geospatial Center. They want to do all that. So hopefully we'll get there. But yeah, most of my days just kind of like briefs, calls, and just kind of learning my role right now.
Great. So one final question, I'm going to pose it to everybody, and we'll start with Michael. Where do you see GIS, not just in the military, but in general? You know, you can touch on the military, but where do you see it going in the future? You know, I'm assuming, and I feel this way, and I think most of you do, that GIS is a growing field in general. You know, where do you see, you know, GIS in the next 20, 30 years? You know, because a lot of the people that are watching this, remember, are you know, the next sort of generation of it. So where do you see it going?
Well, I would say, you know, before you had to kind of deliberately make it an attempt to go use it, right? And now, you know, it's embedded in our everyday lives more and more. I mean, you touch GIS almost every day without even knowing it. You know, it's on your phone, it's on your iPad, it's involved in everything that we do. And that's just going to continue to evolve and become more seamless. And I think, you know, folks are going to use GIS without necessarily knowing they're using it. And for, you know, geospatial professionals like on this panel, that's kind of what we've been trying to enable forever, right? Is enable users to do that, some of that on their own. And then I think, you know, analysts and, you know, real GIS folks that help prepare data and things like that, I think it's in data science. You know, these guys evolve into ensuring these databases are enabled and available for exploitation. But I think GIS is just going to continue to expand. It's going to continue to grow, and it's just going to be part of our everyday lives.
Good. Mick, you know, a comment on that, where you think it's going in the future?
Right here.
Yeah.
Yeah, just kind of like Michael was talking about. He mentioned phones. One of the biggest GIS industry leaders out there, Esri, I'm pretty sure everyone here has worked with Esri products. They're pushing a lot to mobile applications, but there's other companies and open source developers out there that are constantly pushing the envelope and yeah, getting more, you know, just GIS tools developed. We're going to have so much data in the future. We won't physically have any space to store it, not all of it. We'll run out of rare earth metals and things like that. But we got to figure out a way to, you know, understand the data, view it, and really maps the way our human brains work most of the time. We see an image and we ingest it, we understand it. I think that's future GIS, just really accessible, really fast everywhere.
So I don't mean to change the question on Gil and Julio here, but just a slight variation. If somebody is interested in it, what type of training would you suggest? I mean, is you know, go in the military and do that, you know, get the hands-on stuff, or do you know, through colleges, you know, through online courses, through Esri, what, you know, or one of the other software vendors, you know, what do you think is the sort of the best or best path to get into you know, doing GIS and understanding it? Go ahead, Gil. We'll start with you.
Yeah, so just to kind of tag Mick and Michael's points about it becoming seamless and more a part of our lives, we're starting to see GIS like and classes and location-based sort of courses being introduced in the K through 12 realm now across the nation. And so just like our young ones mastered the iPad, you know, well before us, they're going to be mastering these skills and unknowingly have, you know, GIS principles as an additive skill in their everyday life, right? So, but to double down and really get in and hone in on it, the internet is a wonderful repository of resources. There are so many free things that you can go out there and do. You can even find yourself a sponsor or a mentor, a GIS mentor online that can help you build a personal GIS portfolio that you can have shined up and ready to go well before you decide to head into college and make this thing your main career.
And YouTube.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
go ahead, Julio. Go ahead. Feed off of that. Is there, where do you think it's going in the direction that they should take?
I was only introduced because I was into GIS because I was in the military. But for these days, yeah, I've seen it being used in my daughter's school, introduced to them. And it's funny just seeing like their geography classes, they discuss GIS. So as far as I mean, it depends on really like what point in your life, how you are in your life. School-wise, it's good, but you don't get the hands-on. You kind of just sit there and, I'm going through school now and you just sit there and you learn all these things. But the military helped me a lot just to get hands-on. But like I said, YouTube, if I don't know it, I go in there and some guy somewhere else in the world, they made a video about it step by step, and it helps you. If not, Esri has plenty of free classes on there. That also helps me out, but they don't go in depth because they want you to pay for those classes. So yeah, that's it.
Well, great. Well, I appreciate each one of you taking the time to be with us today on this panel. Do you have any closing remarks or anything you'd like to say, or are we good?
Yeah, I mean, if you don't mind, I mean,
No, absolutely.
Yeah, so I just wanted to impart on anyone watching this that GIS it's more than just server stacks and themed map layers. It is really a new lens by which to see everyday problems. And I refer to it as an additive skill set because sometimes your GIS work will be center stage, but most times where you will be the most successful is by bringing in the GIS lens into a larger body of analysis. And the I obviously stands for information, but it could stand for insight as well. And so once you go GIS, you will never see the world the same way. You will begin to make connections between 2 points and wonder what the relationship is between those points in your everyday life.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you, Gil. Anybody else?
Learn to share data, share knowledge, share training, and don't stop learning because this field changes in weeks, months. I mean, you're out of it and you try to come back and you're already outdated.
Absolutely. Share and share alike. Thank you all again for being here, and I appreciate your time, and thank you for watching.